I'm often asked by people who hold Tier A passports like the US, like Ireland, like the UK, should I get another Tier A passport? Today, I'm going to share with you my consideration for getting a similar second passport. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you are treated best. That includes having a second passport, which means more options. You get another country to live in that may treat you more favorably, may give you a better opportunity to travel. There's a lot of benefits to having a second passport, but I often see situations where someone says, hey, I'm a U.S. citizen. Should I become Canadian? My father's Canadian. I can qualify. Or in this case, a question from a gentleman named the Irish Contrarian who says, I have Irish citizenship and I can apply for UK citizenship. I'm seriously unsure if this is a benefit. If someone can give me some direction, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, to answer the earlier point on if I'm an American and I can qualify for Canadian citizenship, I'm going to do that because Canadians have special privileges greater than the visa waiver program to come back and on more flexible terms to the United States than pretty much anyone else in the world. And so if you ever didn't want to be an American because you didn't want to live in the US and you didn't want all the obligations to follow you, a Canadian citizenship gives you less drama when traveling. It gives you, and there's no guarantee of this, but generally speaking, it would give you the ability to come back to the US on relatively favorable terms. Nobody really hates the Canadians. Why wouldn't you get it? And quite frankly, when I look at these situations, I think to myself, okay, if you qualify through a parent or even a grandparent, they're probably not going to change that. But they have changed some of the rules in the past. And so I would want to take it while I could get it if I wanted it. And so let's address the question from the Irish gentleman who can qualify for UK citizenship. Now, in this particular case, Irish citizens can live in the UK and vice versa through an agreement that predated the European Union, of which, of course, the UK is no longer a part of. And so the idea of being a UK citizen to live in London if you ever wanted to, or take advantage of, a tax incentive, or just to live there for whatever other reason, you don't necessarily need that because you have the agreement between the UK and Ireland that you can just go there. But otherwise, I don't really see a downside. I don't see potentially a huge upside other than you have some kind of basic, backup plan. Let's say, for example, that, Ireland being in the European Union decides to enact a certain kind of policy or tax or whatever. Ireland, I think, is probably one of the last countries that wants to go along with, some of that stuff. But perhaps, they would go along. Certainly, they were one of the last holdouts in the global minimum tax on big corporations, and they said, all right, fine, but under certain conditions. So I think they probably got some concessions from the high tax lobbying groups, but ultimately went along. And so if you thought, hey, being an EU citizen is going to be a liability one day, certainly as someone who really enjoys Ireland, I would have a hard time giving up Irish citizenship. But if you said, I don't want to be attached to the EU and Ireland's going along with the EU, you would have a non-EU passport of pretty much equal quality. I think Ireland's passport is probably a little bit better. Obviously, as an EU citizen, you can live anywhere in the EU. But now that the UK is out of the EU, you would have that benefit to not be tied to whatever's happening in the European Union. And so to me, really the risk of getting any Tier A citizenship, which we define as a passport which can take you pretty much everywhere in the world, we call it, can you go to the United States? Because the United States is visa-free travel is a club that's limited to barely 40 countries. And so if you have a passport that can go to the United States, that's obviously a very good passport. And you think, well, what's the risk of getting that? The only risk that I substantially see is some kind of risk of future tax or future regulation. And that could be applied by an individual country, such as Canada, right? So if I'm a U.S. citizen and I'm getting Canadian citizenship, maybe Canada copies parts of the U.S.'s extraterritorial tax in the future. And, that's a bother. But I'm already American, so, it can't really get much worse. And certainly Canada hasn't done it yet and may never do it. So, Canada's given me a step up. The UK has given me an insurance policy. I have the benefits of being part of the EU and I have the benefits of being part of an equal country that shares many of the same values and the same quality of life, but it's not in the EU. And by the way, if I ever had to be, for whatever reason, only British, I could come back to Ireland and live there. There may be potential tax benefits, but again, it doesn't really matter in this case with the CTA. But the risks to me of getting a second Tier A passport or a first Tier A passport if you, let's say you're Chinese, Indian, whatever, you want to get the first Tier A passport. The risks would be tax and regulation. Do I think those risks are extremely high? No. And do I think they're substantially reduced if you plan to live in Europe? We've done a separate episode on that where, if you're going to be a European Union citizen, I think there will still be plenty of ways, for example, to reduce your taxes living in Europe. I think there will be more going after people who are, EU citizens who want to live in Dubai and pay nothing. I think there'll still be opportunities to live in Europe, and so keeping the EU citizenship is good. But otherwise, I don't really see any risks in this scenario. The Irish contrarian qualifies for UK citizenship, presumably through some kind of family tie. So it's not like it creates a weird profile that some people are concerned about, where it's like, how did you get that? I don't know, sounds like he's got a family. Or potentially, you lived there and you qualified for it. It's not like it's adding any kind of minor weirdness. I mean, some people say, I wouldn't want to be a citizen of a Caribbean country because people know it was for sale. By the way, we've worked with folks who were entitled to Caribbean citizenships, not only in countries like Barbados, but also in countries that offer citizenship by investment. And so they are not citizens by investment when they qualified for that. They are through birthright citizens. And so I don't really see that as a huge issue even in the Caribbean, but nobody really looks askance at a UK passport. And so assuming you're going to keep your Irish passport, to me, there's really no burden to adding on an extra Tier A citizenship. The only burden is if you think, now I'm fully covered, I'm insured against every potential outcome. Well, I would argue against that. I would suggest that you really don't have a substantial backup. You have, again, one Western Europe EU, one Western Europe non-EU. And so if my goal was total protection from wild tax increases and wealth taxes and all that in the future, I would still go and look at the Caribbean citizenship. And by the way, you can have multiple citizenships with both Ireland and the UK, and both Canada and the US that we mentioned earlier. You can have a third. So I wouldn't lull myself into thinking that now I'm totally covered against whatever might happen in the Western world. The countries are like right next door to each other. And so I would look at that as a mild backup plan that at least I could probably, if something crazy happened in one or the other, regroup. Now, do I see anything totally crazy coming down the pike in Ireland? I don't. And again, I think that if you're living in Ireland or living in Europe and you have British citizenship, I don't really see much of a risk with that. So my policy on Tier A citizenships is I take them. I'm aware of potentially the minor risks that come, and I'm aware of how to mitigate them. But to answer the question, yes, I would probably, not knowing all the circumstances, apply for UK citizenship. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalist personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.